A person's life can be split up into two halves. In the first half, one must perfect oneself by developing physically as well as spiritually. By the time the second half has arrived, one must already be trying to affect and influence others. By using one's talents to help those who are less developed, one assists them in their own paths towards improvement. Finding oneself by caring for others. One must always try to transcend one's individual world. Sometimes self-centeredness fills one's whole being, until all of one's thoughts are focused only on one's own individual concerns. This way of thinking undermines a person's greatness and will eventually lead to both physical and spiritual suffering. Instead, one must dedicate one's thoughts and desires to the greater good, others, the nation, and the entire world. And, paradoxically, through doing this, one will come to know one's own essence. The Universal Soul. Letter to Rabbi Shmuel Alexandrov, a great Jewish philosopher, mystic and writer who perished in the Holocaust, May 28, 1908. All our limbs are connected organically. Therefore, when one limb suffers, all limbs suffer. This connection can also be felt within a spiritual unity of connected souls. This is the organism in which a family is founded. These senses can become so real and concrete that if we dedicate ourselves to transcending our habitual way of thinking, we realize that there is a connection of pleasure and pain just as from one limb to another, between a father and a son, husband and wife, etc. When these connections expand, our sensitivity will also expand. When the national organism is healthy, each of its members feels connected to it in the same way relatives feel connected to a family. When one develops this connection, the self expands to the level of one's nation. The next step is from the national to the humanitarian level. And yet one more step is from the humanitarian level to all of creation. The final stage moves from an interest in the earth to a deep concern for all of existence. All of this only takes time. Indeed, though it may take a lot of time, eternity has no need to rush. This sensitivity can continue expanding until one has ascended to an individual consciousness of all existence. If this is true, then there is no danger of anarchy in a great self-love that is refined and sophisticated. It is Judaism's goal to give us a practical way of life that is rooted in the individual consciousness of the source of all worlds. Long-lasting peace. When we look at the world, we see so many differences of opinion. We see such stubborn disagreements between individuals and groups of people. Indeed, the more one becomes convinced of one's own opinion, the more intense these disputes will be. Yet, a person who tries to look deeper will realize that these arguments are like two seeds planted in soil. The distance between the two seeds is necessary in order to allow for each seed to be watered, nourished, and grown in each one's optimal way. Whereas planting them too close together would actually have disrupted and ruined both. The distance between the two allows for each plant to flourish. Sincere and long-lasting peace only develops from giving each other space. Those who dwell separately will eventually unite. Zohar, Mishpatim, 95, Amud Aleph. Accepting that people are different from you. Here is an important principle in life. One must live according to one's internal moral intuition, both in thought and in action. One must not focus on the fact that others, with their differing character traits and personalities, do not act in the same way as oneself. Neither should one put down one's friend or think negatively of another for being different from oneself. A person must be careful not to degrade a personality trait or action in a friend that would be destructive and unbecoming for oneself. One should not be so quick to judge that things are the same for another person. Perhaps that which would have been a point of an embarrassment for oneself is for a friend not only harmless, but actually beneficial. Concerning one's attitude to oneself, one should never think that because another behaves in a certain way, and because this is the person one admires, that it therefore must follow that one should copy this person's path in serving God. No, this is not true. Indeed, one may perhaps discover that if one tries to walk down the same path that suits one's friends, one will at best attain only some superficial resemblance, and may in fact become damaged instead. Therefore, a person must be true to oneself, and at the same time judge others favourably, and accept them for who they are. The spiritual importance of disagreements. Rabbi Eliezer said in the name of Rabbi Hanina, Torah scholars increase peace in the world, as it is written, all of your children are students of God, and there will be great peace for your children. Yeshayahu 52. Do not read the words as Banayech, your children, but rather Bonayech, your builders. Berachot 64b. There are those who make the mistake of thinking that world peace will come about when everyone agrees on one opinion. Then, when they see that the more Talmidei Chachamim learn, the more opinions are created, they begin to believe that these people are causing more conflict rather than creating peace. But in truth, in order to increase peace, all the different views and opinions must be articulated. It must be explained how each opinion has its own unique role and function. While on the surface they may seem to contradict each other, when each side's wisdom is truly and deeply expressed, we realize that only by combining different opinions can the light of truth, righteousness, and wisdom of God be truly conveyed. Talmidei Chachamim increase peace in the world. The explanation is as follows. The very fact that they explain, clarify, and give birth to new ideas of Torah from different perspectives is what creates peace. As it is written, all of your children are students of God. Everyone will eventually understand that even the seemingly contradictory opinions are students of God. Each opinion uncovers a different truth of God. Do not read the words as your children, but instead your builders. Just as a house is built from different parts, so too is truth built from the combination of different perspectives and ideas. These and those are the words of the living God. Eruvin 13b. Indeed, each unique method of education has its own role and function. Thus, it is wrong to abandon or throw away any idea or viewpoint. One must invest energy into each side and try to understand its role. And when two opinions are found to be in contradiction, it is precisely through this clash that wisdom is created. The danger of criticizing others. We must examine the nature of those who want to improve others and try to force them to change. Perhaps a certain path is actually good for another person, even though it has its flaws. These flaws may in fact be protecting that person from even greater dangers. May God guide us to be fair. Sometimes we are tempted to enter a mode of criticizing everyone, but this is completely insensitive. We must be compassionate, and when one has compassion on others, God forgives all faults. When religious categories destroy religion, we often imagine that the Jewish people are split up into two groups. There is this never-ending echo. We hear of two names that make up our people, religious and secular. These are new names that in our long history we have never pronounced. Of course, we have always understood that people are not the same, specifically in regard to their inner spiritual nature, but to allocate a separate and distinct name to identify an entire group is entirely new. There is no doubt that the past was better than the present in this regard, and how much better off would we be if we could forget these two names. The pronouncement of these two names and the imaginary agreement that connects certain people together, so that one person will exclaim, "I am from this group," and another will say, "I am from this group," each one feeling pleased with their division, is what prevents any growth and development on either side. The religious person, that is, the person who thinks he belongs to the group that calls itself religious, looks down from a high podium at the secular group. Concerning matters of change, improvement and teshuvah, he aims his critical eye at the other group that stands before him, naked of Torah and mitzvot. He thinks in his mind that improvement only applies to them and not him, quoted from the Pesach Haggadah's response to the wicked son. The secular person, that is, the person who thinks he belongs to the group that calls itself by this modern name, thinks that this entire concept of teshuvah is religious and therefore does not apply to him. Alas, from both sides we stand frozen. From where will the cure to our spiritual sickness come? We have no other choice but to wipe out these two idolatrous names from among the Jewish people. We are not used to two names, but rather three. There is an ancient tradition that the word tzibur, or congregation, includes tzadikim, the righteous, Beinonim, average people, and Reshaim, the wicked. Nevertheless, this allocation of names is only for the sake of the individual's assessment of himself. Therefore, it is most beneficial for each individual to take a personal accounting and purify one's own flaws while looking with a favourable eye towards others. Jewish unity, religious and secular. Concerning the disagreements on how to run the nation, as the secular have increased overwhelmingly and the religious do not want to have anything to do with them, perhaps we should split the nation in two. Or, on the other hand, perhaps the power of national unity is what will overcome all problems. This can be compared to the famous story of the two women who came to King Solomon. When the king of Israel said, "Bring me a sword," he truly had divine wisdom. The mother who said, "Kill the baby," proved to us that she was the fake. This bitter statement expressed what she was really feeling inside. Neither you nor I will get the baby, therefore kill. The compassionate mother, the true mother, said, "Give her the living child, just do not kill." It was Ruach HaKodesh, or divine wisdom, that proclaimed, "Give the living baby to her, for she is the true mother." There is nothing worse than splitting up the physical and spiritual into separate parts. In fact, this is the world view of idol worship. Focusing on the good in people. When we focus on the good qualities of people, an automatic love arises. There is no longer any need for cheap flattery. When we become truly focused on a person's virtues, we become almost unaware of his or her more negative qualities. Love the good and not the bad. One can only explicitly express love to a person who exposes a small spark of goodness. If one attaches one love to that spark, one can love the good side of another without being damaged by the negative and darker side of that person.